Katie,
yeah, the
you don't want any of that
Charlottesville rally
smoke. I promise you.
Led by the Southern Poverty Law Center.
If you think white nationalism is made up by the Southern Poverty Law Center, no wonder you don't have a problem with what J.D. Vance said about Nixon.
The kind you're talking about in MAGA it's made up by the Southern Poverty Law Center. It absolutely
right.
Chris Cuomo just went head-to-head with outspoken MAGA commentator and fellow News Nation host Katie Pavlich, and the exchange quickly turned into one of the most intense political debates you will see. The moment that set everything off was Katie insisting that white nationalism had essentially been invented as a weapon to damage the MAGA movement. Yes, that was really the argument she chose to make. Once you hear the discussion unfold, it becomes clear why so many people have been talking about it. We're going to break down the biggest moments from this fiery showdown, look at how both sides handled the debate, and I will share my own perspective along the way, because this conversation only became more dramatic as it continued.
Why did I think that? Because I realized that the ugly things that I saw coming out of MAGA, the prejudice, the white nationalism, the Christian nationalism, that was the few.
That was made up by the Southern Poverty Law Center?
No, it wasn't made up. Oh, please, Katie.
Yeah, the Charlottesville rally was led by the Southern Poverty Law Center.
If you think white nationalism is made up by the Southern Poverty Law Center, no wonder you don't have a problem with what J.D. Vance said about Nixon.
The kind you're talking about in MAGA it's made up by the Southern Poverty Law Center. It absolutely was.
So there are no real bigots in MAGA.
And an indictment by DOJ to show it.
So there are no real bigots in MAGA. There are no real white nationalists. They've all been put up to it by the Southern Poverty Law Center. Like January 6th was an inside job by the FBI.
That's what the indictment says.
What indictment says? What indictment says that the FBI did January 6th? I love hearing the conspiracies.
I was talking about the indictment of the Southern Poverty Law Center in Alabama, which details how the Southern Poverty Law Center specifically paid the organizer of the Charlottesville rally to take people to and from to make up this fake hate rally that they then used against the president and the right for years. SPLC has been accusing conservatives and the right of...
Just take a second to think about the claim Katie Pavlich was trying to defend during this debate. As the conversation kept moving, one thing became increasingly obvious to me, and that was how much more prepared Chris Cuomo seemed in handling the back and forth. Whatever opinion you may have of Cuomo personally, whether you like him or not, he appeared far more comfortable debating the issues being discussed. Meanwhile, Katie repeatedly relied on interrupting him instead of directly responding to his points. That approach may have worked for her in other interviews, where talking over guests can sometimes control the conversation, but it was far less effective here. Cuomo kept pushing through the interruptions, stayed focused on his arguments, and showed the experience that comes from spending many years navigating live television debates.
For over a decade and defrauding their donors.
If you don't think there's white supremacy,
like
if you think they created
KKK
white supremacy, if you think the Southern Poverty Law Center created white supremacy,
they did.
You go with that, Katie. I'll tell you what, because I've met a lot of people with dead family members in the South who don't think the Southern Poverty Law Center is responsible.
It's about SPLC
First of all,
and the left manufacturing their political arguments.
An indictment, not to mansplain, but an indictment is a charging document. It's a bunch of allegations, not facts. And they are not even charged with doing anything like organizing it.
Thank you very much.
Well, then don't make it sound like it's a fact, because it's not a fact. If you know what it is, then you know you shouldn't represent it as a matter of fact, right?
Okay, Chris. I don't need you to lecture me about belittling the American people, talking to me about how I don't know what an indictment is. I've been working in this industry for 20 years, and you sitting here and acting like I don't know what I'm talking about.
As the exchange became more heated, Katie Pavlich looked increasingly frustrated, while Chris Cuomo continued pressing his arguments. Keep in mind, she hosts her own program on News Nation after previously working at Fox News, so this was not someone unfamiliar with tough television discussions. Even so, the pressure seemed to build as Cuomo challenged what he viewed as misleading claims with facts and direct responses. Watching him calmly dismiss points he considered inaccurate while refusing to back down created some of the most memorable moments of the debate. Whether viewers agreed with him or not, the contrast between his approach and Katie's reactions made the conversation far more dramatic, and it was clear both hosts were determined not to give an inch.
It's absurd.
No,
you're being very disrespectful.
Well, listen, I don't mean it that way, Katie. I want to try to get to what's behind some of these arguments. Like, I think going after the Southern Poverty Law Center.
I don't think you're doing the best way.
I think that's dangerous. I think J.D. Vance saying it's okay to commit a burglary
and false white supremacy
is dangerous.
And falsely accusing conservatives of white supremacy is dangerous. I think saying that people are hateful, like Charlie Kirk, putting him on a hate watch map is dangerous, and he lost his life as a result of this fomenting of this fake
he was killed for what he believed.
We've seen terrorizing the right forever from places like the Southern Poverty Law Center.
One point raised during the discussion centered on Charlie Kirk. The argument made was that no one deserves to lose their life, regardless of political disagreements, and that principle should always remain consistent. At the same time, strong criticism was directed toward Kirk's public rhetoric, with the claim that he frequently promoted divisive and racially charged messages. The distinction being made was between condemning harmful ideas and rejecting political violence, emphasizing that it is possible to criticize someone's actions or beliefs while still believing that every person's life has value.
By a grand jury, by the Department of Justice, that lists a set of facts they will use in federal court, in front of a judge, and in front of juries to make their case. That is real.
They're not
and
facts.
If you want to deny it, you can, but it is a fact.
No.
What
That's
are they
not
then? They're just
an
made
allegation.
Up? They're made up? What are they then?
An allegation is an uncorroborated suggestion that must be proven at trial by material and competent evidence that is found compelling to a judge or a jury. Otherwise, it's just a charging document. But an indictment doesn't have facts. An indictment is putting something forward that they'll believe they'll prove, as a matter of fact. Maybe, we'll see. And if they show that the Southern Poverty Law Center set up the Charlottesville thing, they should all go to prison. If they can show beyond a reasonable doubt that people at the Southern Poverty Law Center created hate groups, they should all go to prison, Katie. I'm here for it. And if you get that story, I will have you lead the whole show. I'll be your correspondent on it.
Well, I have my own
you
show
can have my whole hour.
So I appreciate that.
I know, but I'm saying I'd give you both hours.
At 10 o'clock. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Because I want that. I want us to get to a place where we just call right and wrong everywhere. If the Southern Poverty Law Center did that, wrong.
One thing that has always stood out to me about Chris Cuomo is that he often tries to present both sides of an argument. And there are plenty of times when I disagree with that style. Even so, I do not see him as someone simply repeating political talking points without thinking for himself. Katie Pavlich came across very differently in this exchange. Although she described herself as independent, her arguments closely mirrored the MAGA movement and consistently defended Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and other prominent figures associated with that political circle. From my perspective, her focus seemed less about weighing evidence fairly and more about protecting one side no matter what. Right from the beginning, she launched into familiar attacks on socialists and repeatedly framed MAGA as being in the right while portraying Democrats and the political left as entirely in the wrong. That is a very different approach from trying to evaluate issues based on
wrong. If the Democrats
did it, accept that it's a real
wrong.
indictment and take the facts seriously.
I believe that it's a real indictment. An indictment is not a set of facts. And a lot of times they can't prove it. So?
Another point worth mentioning is the old saying that you can indict a ham sandwich, which is often used to suggest that prosecutors can obtain charges if they really want to. Katie appeared to rely on that line of thinking by arguing that accusations from the Department of Justice should not automatically be treated as established truth. Her position was essentially that legal claims alone are not proof, and that allegations still have to be supported by evidence before people should accept them as fact. Whether someone agrees with that reasoning or not, it was clearly one of the central arguments she continued returning to throughout the debate.
Isn't that your point about Trump? Just because he was indicted, do you believe he was guilty of everything he was accused of in the indictments?
There were some of the facts that were proven to be true and some of them that were not. And a lot of them were developed in a false nature by political actors who we saw for years and years and years tried to keep the president out of politics while they claimed they were for a democracy and preserving this right that we have, while they destroyed his reputation with false smears. When it comes to the Southern Poverty Law Center, over 10 decades, we know what happened. There are many examples of people talking in detail about things that were happening to them and the terrorizing the SPLC did to them and put them on maps, like the Focus on the Family was terrorized. There were a number of people who testified as a result of this out of court for years about what the SPLC was doing. So that is real. But if you want to go back into what Trump was indicted for, we have litigated that over and over again. That was a political witch hunt.
I'm not relitigating it. I'm not relitigating it. Here's what I'm saying. Trump was indicted. Everything in the indictment was not true. I agree with you. The Southern Poverty Law Center has been indicted.
I think you're making an absurd comparison.
This is where Chris Cuomo argued that Katie Pavlich was applying completely different standards depending on who was involved. From his perspective, criticism directed at Donald Trump was immediately dismissed by her as politically motivated because she strongly supports him. At the same time, when organizations like the Southern Poverty Law Center identify white nationalist groups or discuss white nationalism as a real movement, she rejected those conclusions outright. Cuomo's point was that personal agreement or disagreement with a political figure or organization should not determine whether evidence is accepted. He repeatedly stressed that legal standards and factual claims cannot simply be replaced by personal opinions. That was the heart of his argument, while Katie continued defending her position from a perspective that he believed relied far more on political loyalty than on objective facts.
PLC indictment and the indictment against President Trump, they are not comparable in any ways. Completely different scenarios, completely different political arenas, completely different contexts in terms of years of what had happened before the SPLC indictment. And I look forward to.
By the end of the exchange, it was obvious that Katie Pavlich was no longer as comfortable as she had been at the start. She seemed caught off guard by the level of pushback she received, because Chris Cuomo never allowed the conversation to be dominated by constant interruptions. Instead, he remained composed, answered her points directly, and even laughed at moments he considered especially unbelievable. Whether you agree with every argument Cuomo made or not, many viewers felt he controlled the debate from beginning to end, and effectively challenged Katie's claim that white nationalism was essentially created as a political weapon against MAGA. That idea struck many people as extremely difficult to defend, and Cuomo repeatedly pressed her on it throughout the discussion. Now I want to hear what you think. Which side of this debate made the stronger case? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown, be sure to leave a like, subscribe for more political commentary and media analysis, and stay tuned because there is always another major debate just around the corner.